Hello, everybody, and welcome to AI People. Today, we're talking to Alberto Rizzoli, who is the CEO at V7, which is an AI agent development platform and also works in data labeling for AI as well. Greetings, Alberto.
Hey, very nice to meet you. Great to be here.
So we always kick things off by asking for a couple of predictions on the AI industry as a whole. So the first one is, what assumption do you see lots of people making in the AI industry today that you think will look outdated in 5 years' time?
Ooh, 5 years is a long time, but I think assumptions that will be outdated. The first one that I think went outdated maybe 3 months ago is that coding agents can never be as good as human developers. We're now at a stage in which they're actually better than most front-end developers, even at imagining what a UI should look like. And another one is that great design and great user experiences will differentiate bad AI tools from good AI tools. Because these AI agents or these AI models have been looking at so many user interactions online, so many transitions on beautiful websites and products, they're now learning how to develop entire user experiences a lot better than I would say most small startups. And so the difference between creating something functional and something beautiful has become significantly smaller. And the role of designers has changed from having to develop everything in Figma and then turning that into code to usually developing the primitives in Figma and then doing their work in code and developing what feels best in a vibe coding environment and then shipping the part that actually feels best, which is a very unproven point. And this is all on the developer side of things. On everything else, which is generally the area that the V7 most works in, so the knowledge work automation side of things, we kind of knew already that AI was going to revolutionize all types of knowledge work. Now it's become a lot more accessible because the technical barrier to from the threshold of good to great has become significantly smaller. A practical example of V7 is that doing a RAG search across someone's very, very large file base used to be slow and incomplete a year ago, and now it's very thorough, very complete. And we've been able to understand really complex Excel models that previously weren't readable, or really large data rooms full of files. And this has happened really in a matter of months of development. It's not like something where you say, hey, in 3 years, this is going to be great. No, it's going to be great in 6 months. And so it changes a lot, also the decisions that a company needs to make when choosing an AI vendor, because they're actually buying a product that will evolve incredibly quickly, especially if they're buying from a startup. And the mentality that one needs to have when selecting an AI vendor or a partner is how fast are they shipping and how quickly are they iterating on the product that they're doing. I'll keep it at those. There's a lot more predictions that we could do, and 5 years is a long horizon.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years, I suppose, almost becomes irrelevant in the kind of AI industry, doesn't it? So just thinking about kind of domains that have already been kind of had a huge upheaval from AI, like, is there one that you think kind of hasn't been so much touched by AI, but which will be the kind of next big area that people will see change?
So many areas that are outside of traditional either text or software. In fact, V7 started in the computer vision space, and computer vision usually trails 18 months behind breakthroughs in text. A good example is that now we have text generation models or LLMs in general that are incredibly good at basically any task in any domain. And we are capitalizing on them by implementing them in accounting, in tax, in finance and legal, and developing all these great returns. We're still not quite seeing them in practice because a lot of it is still yet to be deployed or just about to be deployed or just about to bear its fruits. But on the other side, on the research side, I think what's happening now with world models and especially in the area of robotics was an area that I was skeptical of. I didn't think that it was that practical to create this real-time rendering world model in such a short amount of time. I thought we would need a lot more time to get there. But DeepMind has been doing some great work on it. There are startups like Odyssey Systems where you can say, hey, imagine a classroom, and you're rendering a classroom frame by frame, and you can control the agent to exit it and to go into the hallways of the school. And this is all the model imagining this reality in real time. And it's exceptional for any kind of robotic planning. And given that the hardware is getting pretty good, robots are able to do backflips. They're not quite good at cleaning your bathtub yet,
Yeah.
but with these environments, we're going to get there a lot faster. So there's a whole other area that is offline that is going to start to see returns in the next couple of years.
Okay. So just before we kind of jump into V7 in detail, do you want to just kind of introduce your kind of background and kind of what you learned from previous companies that brought you to the AI industry?
Yeah, I started developing AI companies in 2015, and this was just after the deep learning revolution. So after the Khrushchevsky paper, where we just discovered that GPUs were useful, and this felt like a 1% breakthrough compared to where we are now. Even in the capital markets, if you look at the attention that NVIDIA got after that paper came out and all these AI companies started to spawn, was much smaller than after ChatGPT. But what it taught us was that the AI could viably learn tasks if you really narrowed its knowledge to one specific area. So my co-founder and I built V7 to solve that a few years later, still in the deep learning revolution, to automate the task of data labeling. And data labeling is effectively teaching AI how to solve one task by showing it examples that are sometimes human-made, but mostly AI-generated. So it's effectively training in its own little gym. As time evolved, we developed it into a complete work automation suite where you didn't actually have to spend so much time training these AIs, but actually just using them. And as for myself, I've seen these ebbs and flows of the space. I started with a non-technical background in this field and learned along the way. And 10 years is a very long time to learn the ins and outs of AI. So at this point, I feel quite familiar with it. But the fun part is that every time you learn something, you're outdated within 6 months. So probably even the best AI researchers nowadays still have a very incomplete view of the entire research field since it's moving at this breakneck speed. And V7 is my second AI company. Before this, I ran a company called iPoly that focused purely on computer vision, and it was in real time on smartphones. So you could wave your smartphone around, and there was an iOS app that would run locally and identify objects in images. And this was, many years before ChatGPT could do live video view, but obviously it was also many times more underpowered. But it was at least a glimpse of what AI will be able to do in a few years. So for all of these amazing breakthroughs that we tend to see, and we think like, wow, it painted a picture, how amazing. A lot of researchers were able to predict this by looking at the very junky versions of all of this from years ago. And over time, you build this sense of seeing an early result in a new research stream, and you imagine what it will be like if it's 100 times better. And that's kind of what it will look like in 36 months.
And do you notice that kind of speed of change accelerating? Or, you mentioned over 10 years, kind of everything you learn is kind of outdated in 6 months. Has that been consistent over 10 years, or are you seeing an acceleration in that in the last 2-3 years?
I think it's accelerating in the fact that it's spreading more widely. In other words, I think like the core improvement comes from the number of transistors, and we're still sort of following Moore's law. Debatable, but we're still on that track. But the number of implementations of AI has grown massively. Whereas, you used to know the numbers of AI companies in a city, and you could sometimes count them on two hands. Now, almost every tech startup is an AI company. And so we're seeing innovations across the board. And I think we will continue to feel this accelerating feeling because we're now in the implementation phase. We will start to see more AI claims processing system. The next time you file an insurance claim, it will be done much faster, more diligently by an AI than the previous automated systems that ran on heuristics. We're going to see it in customer support. And so we're going to continue to feel this accelerating pace.
Okay. So if we jump into V7 then, I mean, you mentioned a little bit about kind of how you started the company and then kind of moving more into work automation. Do you just want to give us some detail on the product and the problems that you're solving for customers today?
Yeah, a V7 is an agent builder, and an agent is nothing but a workflow executor that learns how you're supposed to do your work. And we saw this gap in these really excellent chat models that were being built for consumers. And then on the opposite end, you had these complex enterprise platforms like what Palantir does for large enterprises, usually in defense. And there really wasn't at the time much of a space in between, except for incumbents, companies like Notion or Asana or all these sort of project management tools. They were starting to shyly integrate AI, but we wanted to build something from the ground up where you could just delegate any piece of work and then explain how it should be done. And in the step-by-step explanation that you provided, an agent will be developed that can complete it end to end. And an example of it in the world of finance is that when an asset manager receives an information memorandum, which is a 70-page pitch deck full of financial information, they spend something like 12 hours on this document. And this is one of the most paid jobs in the world. It's behind some billion-dollar transactions, and the actual steps in between. When you break them down, when you break down almost every standard operating procedure within a company, they're quite simple. And so we wanted to build a UI where people could develop these chains of thoughts with in a completely no-code environment. If you look at V7, it sort of looks like a spreadsheet where every column of that spreadsheet is a step and every row is an agent run. And they go from left to right, completing small steps and sometimes skipping some and sometimes using additional tools like searching the web for information or searching your internal knowledge base. And this way you can configure a workflow similar to what you would get with Zapier, but to complete dozens of steps in a much more diligent way. And it's effectively automating these end-to-end processes for anything that doesn't involve 2 to 3 steps, but is rather something really complex, like what you would do in any white-collar industry where someone is generally in front of a computer for 10 hours a day.
And who's the kind of ideal user here? Like you mentioned, it's a no-code agent. Is this purely for kind of business unit users, or do you see your customers kind of having technical people involved in kind of building these agents?
Yeah, our biggest customers are API users. And so V7 actually powers some very well-known products, some startups that have been very successful and raised a lot of money because it allows this flexibility. You can start in a completely no-code way, but then you can go in incredibly high detail in what the agent is actually supposed to do. And when you think about it, if you've ever used something like Claude Code and you ask it to do something, it's sometimes a little bit sloppy. It will take the non-optimal path, but you don't care because it's going to cost you 15 cents in tokens to take that suboptimal path. But when you're doing it in an industry that processes millions of parallel tasks every month, then you start to look at these optimizations. Or in a similar way, when you're dealing with a transaction that costs millions of dollars, you want to make sure it's left no stone unturned and it's actually followed the same steps that you would do as a human. And so it allows people to develop them no code by simply giving them a series of text prompts and some indication of like, hey, here's where you should go and look for the answer, all the way to stop here and run this Python script and go and check whether this other agent has completed their work and then come back. And with these set of primitives, these basic ingredients, you can automate everything inside a company. And this is where we want to be, is having one engine of automation that any enterprise or medium business can implement and slowly tackle every manual process, eliminating one by one, but also giving that additional flexibility that intelligent LLMs have to tell you, hey, something went wrong here. There's an outlier case, or we need some human help. And I think that will give us a true and honest view of what the future of work will look like when companies do not have a barrier to entry to automating something. Then it gives us a glimpse into the future. What will the banking industry look like, or the insurance industry look like, when someone can write a prompt and have an entire end-to-end process spun up for them. I think it will involve focusing on the most crucial cases, and it will involve a lot less, let's say, elimination of or like dealing with certain cases by policy, where it's like, hey, computer said no, that these rules don't apply, so you don't get your claim approved.
So you're kind of aiming this at kind of across industries, across different roles, across different use cases. So it's a kind of 100% kind of generalist platform.
It's primarily sold to CTOs that are looking for a single automation platform for a white-collar industry. And the industries that we target are financial services, tax, legal, real estate, and insurance. But the inbound interest that we get comes from all over. We have some large logistics companies on board. We have pet care companies, small airline companies. And so even though you built a product to target certain industries from a marketing perspective, you can expect adoption to go beyond that. And the first user, the champion that tends to appear, is usually someone that's a bit of a maverick and is looking at an internal process and saying, I want to do this with AI. And that's usually the MVP in most companies, because they're the first person to say, let's give it a try. And for anyone that has been working with AI in this context of eliminating the most boring and repetitive and generally unloved work, it opens up a different mentality when you actually start doing it, where you no longer think, hey, we're going to have to go through this process manually. We're going to have to copy over all these logs and do all this data entry. Instead, you just give it to an AI agent and you kind of co-work with it for a little bit, and then you let it run for the rest of the process. In fact, I'm running some processes right now in parallel that are happening behind the screen that we're recording on. And I feel pretty confident that by the time we're finished talking, there will be some progress that I can just send through.
That's good. So you could be recording podcasts and working at the same time. So I'm interested in the kind of general versus kind of specific point, because there are lots of kind of agent automation tools which will focus on like one use case or like one industry. So it's like a sales enablement or a very, very specific area. Like what do you think is going to dictate the kind of winners and losers out of those people who've gone like very, very narrow with these agent platforms versus people who support a really wide number of use cases and industries like you do?
I might be in the minority in this belief, but I think that going too narrow is a losing battle, with some exceptions. There are certain areas where you can make agents that are never going to be as good as what an everything platform can do down the road. Let's imagine if Salesforce or HubSpot were founded today and people were like really hungry within those companies, they could probably take care of doing a sourcing competitor to Clay that is good enough and to have this really high distribution. I believe that the core ingredients are not that unique. The focus, though, really helps in creating trust that you really do have the better version of this. Hence why we decided to focus on fewer industries, but still to tackle multiple workflows within those industries. But when you break it down to the atomic units, most of what knowledge work actually is search things, read things, write things, send things. And if you develop these 4 capabilities and you develop them well enough, then you can write a PowerPoint presentation, you can search for the right information, you can search for the style of design that the company normally uses and implement it. And we believe that in the long run, certain companies will prefer to have one platform to do all these things. And the added advantage is that if someone develops an agent, it becomes immediately available to me and I can start using it, and vice versa. Now, having said that, another advantage to what we do is that not everything that V7 does is built from the ground up by V7. There's some really excellent APIs. For example, Exa is a search API company.
Yeah, I know them.
They compete with, I suppose, Brave on generic search, but they also have a really good people search tool that swerves around LinkedIn somehow, which tends to block a lot of bots. And that's something that we can integrate as a tool for these agents to use, where every now and then they're using a third party. The challenge that we have is to maintain people within one ecosystem. And in that, we compete more and more with the model developers, like Anthropic has Claude Cowork as well as Claude Code. OpenAI has given a lot more capabilities to the GPT agent. If you've not tried it, it can make image editing processes now. It can edit videos by installing FFmpeg and splitting them, which are kind of impressive things. They're not. These were all startups a year ago. It was viable to have a startup where, hey, here's an AI agent that will edit your videos for you. And now it's becoming something that the GPT agent is becoming capable of doing.
And there are a lot of kind of agent automation platforms out there, but not many of them have come from the kind of data training, data labeling background that the V7 has. Like, what kind of advantage do you think that gives, if any?
We have been in very close touch with the research community in AI, and so we know a little bit further in advance what is going to come through. And on the other side, a lot of document understanding used to be a data labeling process 3 years ago. So if you had to if you're a logistics company and logistics company process millions of pages of paperwork every day, it's quite insane. More often than not, these actually get printed and scanned. You have a team of researchers that is spending every day labeling data and training AI models, and then relabeling the data and then training AI models. And we had that advantage in really understanding the nitty-gritty details of every single work stream that would eventually process a lot of document data and then implemented them into an agent platform. Having said that, there's still a ton of noise in the market. There's almost every YC company is now an AI agents for the enterprise company.
Yeah.
And I think that's a normal path. It's like a normal zeitgeist of where we are. We're in a Cambrian explosion, and every Cambrian explosion is followed by a very sharp survival of the fittest period. And we'll probably see that in a year's time.
And you mentioned the kind of maverick sort of employee within a lot of the companies where you start talking to them. What's the kind of most common mistake that you see people making when they try to solve some problems for themselves and perhaps use some tools and haven't quite got the results that they were looking for? Like, where are people falling down before they come and talk to you?
More often than not, they have purchased some very expensive AI products that sometimes are too narrowly focused, and they've been built to do one or two things particularly well. But almost every company, when you're selling in B2B, has their own way of doing something, and they will come to you with feature requests. And we instead built Go as the series of basic ingredients that you can chain in any workflow. And we rarely ever have to develop something custom for a customer because it's just adding a node to the workflow or adding a column to our agent tables. So the most common thing is, hey, we've tried X, Y, and Z, and didn't work out. We spent a lot of money on proof of concepts, which tends to be the AI recipe. Like, everyone is selling a proof of concept. No one is selling something in production. And I think a proof point to that is our churn rate is 3 to 5 times lower than what we see in competitors. In general, because we tend to build something that is more complex and generally takes several hours to do. And then when that gets deployed into production, no one wants to change that process afterwards. Or, I mean, they can by prompting it, but no one says like, this was a POC. It's not perfect. It does the job 80% of the time. And it's really impressive that it can do the job. And it only took me an hour to put it together, but like, we're not gonna rely our entire business on it. And another thing that we tend to see is people are often not ambitious enough with what they want to do with AI. And so they will be in this like continuous POC loop. And this tends to happen because of human inertia, where almost every CEO is being told by their board, what are you going to do about AI? What are you going to do with AI? And the kind of painkiller to that is let's just try a whole bunch of things. But it's actually it feels very risky to say, hey, our moneymaker is this particular workflow, and we're going to replace 50% of it or more with AI steps because AI is very good at them. And I take responsibility for making it work. It's a fairly gargantuan task by companies that are not engineering companies. If you're Google, you feel excited to change the core algorithm of Google search. Very risky button, but like it's an engineering company. If you're a law firm and you have to change the way something has been done for the past 30 years by introducing this weird black box technology, it feels very risky. The downside to that is that you learn less quickly, and you eventually breed this culture of being this laggard company that is not implementing new ways of doing things. And you also find yourself becoming more and more stubborn in those old ways. And we can see this happening a little bit with consulting companies, which are literally offering the same services that ChatGPT offers you, with sometimes lower quality in some cases. And it's very comfortable to say, hey, we're going to continue to be a presentations and POC company, because that's what our clients want, and our clients actually like our people. They don't care about the AI and the technology. And you can tell yourself that story until the client discovers that they can generate a deep research report on a topic and then do an experiment with Lovable, and it looks kind of good enough. And then they start doubting that all of this was worth anything.
So you're in quite a unique position in that you've kind of been through two waves in the AI industry. So one in the kind of data labeling market and training AI models, and then now in that kind of AI automation space. I'm interested kind of what are the similarities you've seen in those two markets, and what are the big differences?
In the previous era, we were all building for research. So we were all trying to discover what AI could do and training models on a continuous basis. And then every single company was an expert in a very narrow domain with their model. In the current era, we are all using the same classes of models because it costs hundreds of millions of dollars to train one. So it becomes a capital markets issue to even do your own. And instead, we are differentiating on the user experience that comes from it. And it's quite a different field. The latter obviously moves way, way more quickly because you're using this like general purpose computer to build experiences out of it. And it also sells way more quickly because there's a much lower barrier to entry to using that piece. You don't actually have to invest any research time in creating a leading AI. But the shift was really difficult and in many cases painful. And a lot of AI companies that went to market before 2020 had to go through the shift or die. And some of them are these kind of like zombie companies that have not fully embraced the era of LLMs. Some of them are in denial and they say, hey, it's too risky of a technology. It's too much of a black box. Next token prediction is a fad. And I remember that back when we first started V7, the same argument was being made by folks in classical computer vision, which was the generation even before that. People were saying deep learning models are too non-deterministic. You can't actually debug why they made a decision or why they haven't made a decision. So they will never be used for critical decision making in mission critical areas like in an oil refinery. Lo and behold, now these deep learning models are being used whether to decide to launch a missile or not. So we've really gone a long way since then. And I think in the future, the same thing will happen with LLMs, whether we like it or not. The LLMs will make some pretty important decisions. And unfortunately, even though the first principles of it make it less deterministic, the decision is likely going to be better and better thought through. And who knows, maybe in the next generation, we will get to one of those Mechanicus moments in science fiction where we no longer understand the technology, and we just ask it questions, and it tries to explain itself. Yeah, we just it's sort of like when you give an iPad to a child. They don't really understand that it's a computer and all the things that are happening inside that
It
slab
just
of
kind of
glass.
does what they need it to do. Yeah. And when you were kind of building V7 as a company, how difficult a decision was it to kind of move into this new product era of kind of agent automation? You know, you've obviously got good revenue streams on the labeling side at that point. You know, that was that keeping you up at night, or was that kind of the logical next place to go?
I think it felt like a breath of fresh air, even though the revenue was great, the growth was there. When you're a founder, you're always you're always worried about the longevity of what you're doing. And the moment you step on the next ship, or the next rocket ship, if you will, uh, everything becomes a lot clearer. And you realize that, like, if there were any things that you were in denial for, that you're no longer in denial because you're now in the smaller but faster rocket ship. And it won't be the first time we do something like this. I think the era of companies that do one thing and never change is long over. And who knows? There might be another AI breakthrough that requires a lot of companies to retool everything that they're doing.
Is there anything that you're kind of reading about in the research space at the moment which gets you excited and sort of little ideas whirring for that next step?
I think the research I'm actually less connected to the research fire hose today than I was 2 years ago, simply because there is way too much being produced. And one thing I have noticed, though, is that when a landmark paper comes out that discovers a breakthrough that then gets adopted industry-wide, there's a lot of fervor in the academic community, and there's maybe like an 18-month to 2-year gap before anything meaningful gets created from there. And so there is time, if whoever's listening is like thinking of founding the next company, to pick up a brand new area of research. Having said that, what's also changed is that unless you're building something with hardware, the the zero to POC journey has become so short that it's actually more viable to understand an industry than it is to understand the technology. And understanding an industry requires talking to a lot of people, immersing yourself in it, meeting them as humans, not just in their job. And it's now almost becoming the thing that I think a venture capitalist should index for, is how much does this person understand the problems of this industry, and obviously how technically capable they are. Because you could give a coding agent to the smartest developer in the world and a very smart person that's worked in the healthcare system, and then ask them build something great for the healthcare system. And I think the latter will be more successful after 3 months.
Great stuff. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Alberto. If people want to get in touch and discuss V7, what's the best way to reach you? Are you LinkedIn, Twitter? Where do you spend most of your time? Or X, rather?
Yeah, we're V7 Labs on X, or on LinkedIn, and I'm Alberto Rizzoli on both platforms. I use X less regularly, but I do read it. So if you want to message me there, feel free.
Great stuff. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.